Jenn Knight. I'm the co-founder and CTO of a company called AgentSync. We focus on producer lifecycle management in the insurance space. We have been around for 5 years, and I have been in the insurance space for 5 years. Before that, I spent my career in business applications and business technology in some tech companies you may have heard of, LinkedIn, Dropbox, and Stripe. So my background is more about data and business processes driven by data, and then got to experience the insurance space recently with AgentSync. I would just echo that. I think Kim said it as well. The strong foundations of comfort with data. Do you have the right data being captured? Are people across the business thinking about that? You can't retroactively go back and get data often. And so as you're starting projects with folks across the business, one thing that I've seen both for our customer base and also in my prior life is to build that trust, you also have to build context on the business. And one of the most challenging things that I've seen is when someone comes in with a very powerful model, but it's pointed at the wrong thing, or they're not able to bridge that gap with the business because they haven't brought the business along in terms of those strong foundations. I know your data, I know what you're trying to achieve, I can speak your language, now I can show you with this advanced tooling how to get there faster and then create a larger dialogue around it. So I think a lot about it. For us, we're focused on the business process side, which is often, I think, a little bit lagging in terms of getting the support from an analytics team, and then sometimes can have a little bit of a different bridge of really understanding what you're trying to solve. So I just echo that kind of sentiment of really knowing which groups are where, how you've supported them in the past, kind of their literacy on the topic, and then making sure that you're doing that thoughtful bridge as opposed to showing up with what can be kind of a scary technology and saying, well, here's what my model says, what do you think about it, right? There's a whole process that gets you there. What we've found for our customers is as we get them more acquainted with the data and help them answer those questions, of course they ask more and more interesting questions and we can provide more and more interesting answers, but it's that meet you where you are as an internal employee as well, and then be thoughtful about helping people over a course of several months sometimes get to a place where they can start to really drive good business decisions. I was reflecting on this as we were going to the panel, and one of the biggest advantages I had in my career, to speak kind of to how I think about this with our customers, is when I joined LinkedIn, it was 2011, and I was a Salesforce engineer. But I had the opportunity to sit down and do a SQL class with a data analyst who was kind of a jack of all trades at LinkedIn, and he did it for anyone in the business who raised their hand. And it was a multi-week course that took us through data that was applicable to our job, applicable to LinkedIn, and got us comfortable with that system. Those SQL skills have served me through my whole career to answer all sorts of questions. There's obviously a point I hit when I'm like, raise my hand, and I go to a centralized team and say, hey, I've now written a thing that just look away. It's not perfect, but I'm trying to answer that question. And that combined with being a user of the Salesforce platform, which has reporting and dashboarding out of the gate, allowed me as an individual in the organization to become more data literate and have more access and empower myself to answer questions. I think, so my belief is that you should have data analysts everywhere, that it's really dangerous to talk about this only in advanced models as data on high, because it limits the people who are closest to the problem from feeling like they can ask questions about the problem. So the culture there is like, how do you foster a culture of curiosity and accessibility and not fear around data? And now you're asking what's the flip side, right? Data can tell you a lot of different things, and that's the flip side risk. And so the places that I've worked and when we work with our customers who are doing, I think that the best job of encouraging that culture is helping people ask questions that can be answered by data from the top down, reinforcing things around data, not emotions, getting to facts, right, as a practice. And then creating a space and a support mechanism that says, hey, you can get started, but when you get to that edge, raise your hand, or when you need feedback, here's how I'm going to give you that feedback in a way that encourages your learning versus says, actually, maybe you shouldn't have touched that data set, you should have handed it to this other group. Because that's where you start to build that trust flywheel of I can take my team from whatever, 0 to 1, 1 to 2, and now, oh cool, now we have an opportunity to talk to a specialized team who can help us build a more advanced model. And when we're talking to them, we're speaking about it from a data frame versus purely that business problem statement. So that's, through a couple places I've been in, as for our customers, we try to build a culture of awareness of accessibility to data. I also think that that's something that today we have an advantage of is really great platforms, and like I said, I'm mostly in the business application space, but they should be providing you that data. If you have a platform that isn't, it's not your problem, it's a platform's problem. And so kind of retraining that idea of, well, I can't see it, to, hey, how do we get to a place where we can get our benchmarks? And then how do we think about refining that has been really key. I'll say as a vendor, when I think about it, I think always about our success, and ours is not an analytics product, but I think it applies here. Our success has a lot to do with who do we have on the other side, their expertise, and how do they support and challenge us as a vendor coming in. And I've seen this in my past life with analytics products in particular, bringing them in, where sometimes the business has sold this idea of this tool is going to come in and solve this problem, but actually there's a lot of foundational work that they need to have done, and they don't necessarily have that support. So I think data, for me in my past life, I've always been a little nervous about that when I don't have the internal expertise, and so I really would echo that. Like, who do we have that we're extending with this purchase versus trying to fully replace that expertise in-house? Because you're always, and I'll put my vendor hat on again, like, we have the best interactions and the best time with customers who come with someone inside who has that deep expertise, who knows what they're trying to answer. They haven't had the tooling to answer it. And then we give them that tooling, and it's just like the light bulb comes on, and they start to ask all these different questions. And so that's, I think, my reaction to it. I always encourage, make sure you've invested in that group of people who will really help bring this to life, and you're using it as an accelerant versus a replacement.
Absolutely.
You can never skirt the foundations. One of the fun parts about starting a company and having seen some of the consequences as you scaled up and having to replatform or having to have the business catch up to the support that was given to the product side of the house at prior companies, and you can have trust at the start that gets kind of eroded over time because some of the things around those foundations of governance of the data, quality of the data, exposure of what was happening. I inherited some internal black box models and internal black box data in some prior roles, and it was really difficult for my consumers to use. So within AgentSync, we're a smaller company, but we have a data labs team. They have their foundations. They have lineage on the data. They have a way to expose that to the customer from almost day one. Now there's a balancing act of not over-investing in that, but we thought a lot about what do we need to do today so that 6, 8, 12 months from now, as this data gets more complex, we can retain that trust and confidence in it. So it's not just a one-shot every time, and that's about where we go in the future. And I think also you're going to replatform every once in a while, so be okay with that. Move with a little urgency and honesty around it.
The panel team, Kathleen, Jen, and Glenn, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.